Okay. Alrighty, hello there everyone. And now it's coming through. Okay, there we go. I think I just figured out what my technical problems have been. Okay, so I am Carol Crafty Grandma, and today we are going to make what's called a splitting hairs table runner. This book is called Quilts You Can Make in a Day. So I'm going to run for a couple hours today, probably going to need another couple hours next week. It's a very basic quilt. It's simple, nothing complicated. And if you happen to have any extra 2.5-inch fabric strips, they're going to work. So that'll be nice to use those. All right, so 10 to 12 coordinating 2.5 by fabric width strips. That's the first thing the directions call for. And it says 10 to 12. I don't know how many I have in different fabrics. That's the same fabric. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have 15 different fabric patterns. So that's cool. And then I'm using a solid bright white base. All right. So let's look and decide which colors we want to use. Got red, yellow, so it's basically rainbow. The green is more aqua. Kind of like that one. I'm looking more for patterns more than I am for the colors. I don't want anything too boring, but I don't want anything that's too busy either. So this is that same pattern, but in a different color. That could be cool. Not crazy about that. This one is that same pattern, but in a different color. And now keep in mind, these are not going to be in any order. They're going to be scattered throughout the quilt. So we can duplicate if we want. We're just going to have to make sure when we lay out our squares that they don't get too close to each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see. That'll be 8. Nine. 10. All right, so we've got 3 of that pattern, 2 of that pattern, 2 of that pattern. Those are fairly close. Let's see, is there anything? Got an awful lot of green. Maybe not. Let's throw one more green up there. It did say 10 to 12. I already have that one up there. Let's do this. There we go. All right, so we now have 12 options. And a really messy remainder of a jelly roll. I'm not even 100% certain what I made with this jelly roll, but hey. I'm sure it's around somewhere. And I would guess if you go back on my playlists anywhere, you might find it. Okay, there we go. Well, I think I have enough left. I could redo this quilt a second time if I wanted to. All right, so we needed that. I got fuzzies all over my table. And 1 5/8 yards white solid. So I'm doing white. I've got the white right there. Backing to size and batting to size. So I'm going to use the white as the backing also, and I have batting all over the place. So we're good. Thread. The catch with the thread is I don't think I have bright white cotton. I do not. I have bright white polyester. Oh wait, I lied. I do. It was just hidden away in the corner. So I'm going to use 100% cotton thread in the bright white color. So we're going to have lots of bright white. And I think I even have some bright white batting. I don't know if I have enough for the table runner, but I know I had some over there. Or I'll do like I like to do with table runners and throw the batting that is heat resistant. I'm going to try and turn on another light. I feel like it was just a little dark. Yeah. There we go. That's a little bit better. There's just not enough light coming in through the window today, obviously. Usually there's tons. All right. Onward and upward. Cutting from the 2.5 inch by fabric width strips, cut 48 2.5 inch by 5.5 inch A rectangles. All right, 48, I've got 12. That's why I went with 12, even number to divide by. So that means we need 4 of them. 4 times 12 is 48. So we pull down our strips, and we need to go here and there. You should not be sitting there. You should be over here. Okay. Not that way. All right, I got fuzzies all over my shirt too. All right, I'm going with 4 layers. Dependent upon your interest and, well, I just, whether you really want to get it done fast or not, you can do as many layers as you want. I'm going to cut off the selvage. So I'm cutting down, the selvage is about, looks like 3/4 of an inch down, and I'm adding another 3/4 of an inch or so down, just so that I can make sure I get it all cut off. All right, so there we go. Got the selvage taken care of. And now it needs to be 5.5 inches long. So, keeping everybody straight and smooth, take a ruler to 5.5. We line it up on the edge. One. Two. Three. And this this is where it gets a little tricky, because wherever the fold is, see how it kind of pops up? We want to try and make sure everybody's straight. And 4. Now, a lot of people prefer not to cut over the fold and just cut up to the fold, and then I've never had any real issues with it, so I will keep doing it. But if you find that you're off a bit, that's what's going to happen. All right, and then 36 divided by 12 is 3. So I need 3 1.5-inch C-squares from each color fabric. Keeping in mind this is 2.5 inches wide. So we can only get one 1.5-inch square out of this. And we need 3 of them. So 3 times, we're going to go 1.5-inch squares. 1.5. One and a half. And 1.5. Try and always use the smallest square possible whenever you're cutting, and just makes life a little bit easier. All right, now can I get through all 12 layers of this without messing them all up? No, I cannot. All right. Make sure we're 1.5 inches and everybody's square. Okay, so that's our first batch of them. And 1.5. There we go. All right, so we have our first stack taken care of. We have 5.5-inch strips here. We have 1.5-inch squares here. And we do have this much of the fabric left. It's up to you what you're going to do with this. I am not going to save it. I am going to throw it away. I have way too much fabric, and I do not need any more fabric. So in the garbage it goes. Cut off the salvage. Five and a half inches. And two. Now this one I might skip over the fold. These are not laying well together past the fold. So I am going to do this. I'm going to go back this way. Make sure they're all even. I'm going to do the same thing. Cut off the salvage. And now the fourth 5.5 inch strip. And 1.5 inches. And 1.5 inches. And 1.5 inches. This remaining is going in the garbage. And now square them up. You'll also notice that this particular ruler has a bunch of little black lines on it. So that makes it easier to square everything. You've got a complete line to follow, not just the yellow notch marks. And it makes it easier to actually square it up. All right, one. Oops. One and a half. Two. And three. All right. Last but most certainly not least, the final four. Go. One. Two. Three. Flip. and the fourth 5.5. And 3 1.5s. Okay, garbage. One and a half squared. One and a half squared. And last but certainly not least of the colored squares, all right. So that takes care of all of our colored squares. So we've got 48 2.5 by 5.5 inch strips. If you don't have 2.5 inch strips, you can always cut 2.5 inch strips out of any fabric you want. You also don't have to have it be multiple different patterns. You can use the exact same fabric and make it. But anyway, so we have that. And we have our 36 1.5 inch squares. So the next thing the pattern tells me to do is from the white solid fabric, cut 4 5.5 inch by fabric width strips. Okay. So here's my fabric. This is how it came. I think I got it off of Amazon. All right. So I need a 5.5 inch strip. So I find the salvage, and I measure. I'm going to measure 6.5 inches. That way I can tear both sides. Cut it down. Oops. So I cut it down through the cell. Ooh, wow, that brightness is really off. This bright white is messing with things. Ooh, we may not be able to use that camera. It's got a little notch in it, and now I'm going to tear the fabric all the way down. And I'm going to set it aside. Stay. So now I have the fabric torn on one edge. You do this so that you can get the grain of the fabric going evenly. So now we take our fabric strip that we have, fold it in half, and matching up the torn side, we're going to press the fabric. So you start at the fold, and match up the grain of the fabric. And press. And then making sure you have the grain of the fabric matched up where you tore the fabric, you're going to press it to the salvages. Keeping everybody straight. What the heck? Okay, I don't know. Technology wants to be challenging today. So we're making sure that it's all pressed. And I apologize. My iron turns off if you don't move it, so it's not very warm right now. There we go. I think it's warmed itself back up now. All right. Hopefully we've got 5.5 inches here. It did not stretch well. So this stuff is called Best Press. It's a starch alternative. I have starch right behind me. Oops, there we go. And I use both intermittent. I mix them up depending upon my mood. And I'm in the mood for some cherry blossom smell today, so that's where I went. Okay. Now let's bring it over here and you'll see, I'm going to show you what I'm concerned about. Hopefully this camera won't totally fry out on me. Okay. So here is the torn edge. You can see I've matched them up and pressed them together. Here is the cut edge as it came in the mail. So here is my fold down here, which is pretty much matched up. But by the time I get up to the salvage, you can see how off it was when they cut it. And I don't know if that's 5.5 inches. It doesn't quite look it. Let's see. Actually, it is. That's where the 6.5 came from. Excellent. So the 6.5, this is where I cut the fabric to tear it. So it worked. That's good. So now I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to fold it over a second time. Because remember I told you, you always want to try and use the smallest ruler possible. So I want to use this one. And it would not reach if the fabric was full length. So now I'm going to trim off this edge that I tore from the bolt, from the fabric. And now I am going to use what's called the 2 ruler method. I'm going to take another ruler and I'm going to measure in 5.5 inches, making sure to line it up on the cut edge that I just made. I'm going to take this second ruler that I've been using. I'm going to butt them together and I'm going to make sure that it's even on the fold also. So we've got a nice square strip. Move this one out of the way and cut 5.5 inches. Yep, 5.5 inches. Get rid of the big ruler because it's a pain in the butt. And now I need to subcut. Oh, I needed 4 of these. I should have read better, sorry. All right, so that's one. We're gonna have to cut the other ones too. Let's put that one over there. So 3 more. 5.5 is 11. 16.5. So since I've already torn the fabric here, this is already torn, I need 16.5 inches. So I am going to go with 17 inches. I'm only going to add a 1/2 inch this time because I know that it's already straight on one side. There we go. Go over here, I clip through the selvage, and now I tear. Okay, same situation. We're doing the exact same thing as we did before, just using longer or a wider piece. Even up. I want to go this way. Even up the torn edge, and in this case you can use either side because both sides are torn. Now we press the fabric. Okay, there we go. And then we fold it over a second time. Trim off the edge. Line up your ruler with the fold. Trim off the torn edge. And now 5.5 inches. Line line it up. That's 3. And finally, number 4. Oops, keep it straight. Now I can subcut into 83, sorry, subcut into 83 1.5 inch strips. So since there are 4 of these, we should be able to do this without a problem. I need my calculator for a minute. Calculator. All right, 83 divided by 4 is, so I need 21 of these. Which is going to give me more than I need, because obviously 83 is not divisible by 4 evenly. But if I cut 21 of them, I will be good. Just like we did with our 2.5 inch strips, we're going to trim off the salvage. And now we are going to do 1.5 inch strips. One. 2. 3. 4. 5. And then I'm going to do another set of 5. 1. 2. And I'm going to line these up a little bit better. Three. 4. 5. 2, 3, 4, 'I'm going to trim this off around the fold. Get them all nice and squared up again. And 5. All right, so 20, 40, 60. Another batch of 5. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. So 20, 40, 60, 80, and I need 3 more. So I'm going to cut here. I'm going to take 1 away. And now I have 83 strips that are 5.5 by 1.5 inches. Sorry. Okay, now cut 4 2.5 inch by fabric width strips. Subcut 1 strip into 2 2.5 by 19 inches. Oh, okay, that's for the border. For binding. All right, so, oops, I moved the camera. All of this, I can't bring myself to throw this away. There's way too much of it. So it's going to go over with the strips over there. All right. So 4 2.5 inch. So that would be 5, so 10. So I need it to be 10.5 inches wide. And I actually tore it at 11 inches just because I saw how much of this extra thread was hanging around, so I wanted to make sure to have plenty of space to move it out of the way. All right. Let's get that out of the way. This one's got a really tough fold in it that doesn't want to agree with me, so we're going to use the best press. And yes, I did go a little overboard with it, but I tend to do that when it's really stubborn like these were. Alrighty, that looks better. Fold it over. All nice and laid out. And now we are doing 4 2.5-inch strips. Turn my ruler so it's facing the correct direction for me to be able to read it. Line up on the fold. And now, instead of using the 2 ruler method, we're going to use the standard 1 ruler, which means we take the side we just cut and flip it to the other side. So if you were left-handed, you would be doing everything just the opposite of what I just did. So now I'm going to line up on my straight edge and on my folded edge and cut a 2.5-inch strip. And another 2.5-inch strip. Three. And last but not least, a 4th one. Now, as you can see, because I did an entire inch, I've got a whole lot of space over here this time. So that's all waste, which if I had just cut it at 10.5 inches like I should have, it would have been fine. Okay. Subcut 1 strip. Okay, so these 3 are staying as they are for something later on. This one, I need 2 2.5-inch, which they're already 2.5 inches wide, by 19-inch strips. All right, so I'm going to need to pull out the bigger ruler. First, I'll cut off the selvage. Get that out of the way with the little ruler. And it needs to be 19 inches long. So the big ruler comes out. Inches. Line up on the cut edge, the short edge, and then make sure as it goes along, it follows along a line like that. That way you have it square. It should be 2.5 inches wide, so it should be right on one of these edges. So there's one. Now we're going to do the same thing with this one. Line it up on the short edge and then make sure it's lined up along the long edge. 19 inches. There we go. So we have 2. We're going to use later on. Extra garbage. All right. Now, cut 5 2.25 inch by fabric with binding strips. All right, I like to use, let me go out here as I'm talking. I prefer to use a 2.5 inch binding. This calls for a 2¼ inch binding. I'm going to go with 2½, just because that's what I'm more comfortable with. I don't usually do hand tacking on the back of table runners. I just sew them with the machine, and I think the 2½ inches is better for that. So I'm going to cut 5 2½ inch strips. So that would be 5, 10, 12½. So I am going to tear the fabric at 13 inches. All right, where's my torn edge? There's my torn edge. There's my 13 inches. Alrighty, that goes back over there for later on when we need our backing. Yeah, and it just says backing to size. It does not say how big the backing is going to be. Do not think I like that camera sitting right there. That's really bothering me. If you've watched any of my other videos, it's not normally there. I'm having a camera issue with the camera that I normally have sitting on this side. And I'm just not liking the angle that that is producing. Last thing we should need to cut. Well, until we get to the batting and the backing, but this is very wrinkled on the torn edge. The other pieces I was able to pull off. The wrinkling was there, but it was not on the torn edge. It was in further. Okay. That was wrong. That's only 1.5 inches. Now I'm not going to have enough. I can use some of that. It'll have more joins, but it'll be fine. All right, so 2.5. Two. Three. Four. All right, and leftovers that I ended up saving. So how many inches do I have? 10. So this is 40. This will work. Standard salvage to salvage is 42 inches. So basically I have another whole strip here, but they are going to be seamed, so it might be a little awkward, but it shouldn't be too bad. I can pull it off. Okay. And I thought you were there. You're not. Okay, there we go. All right, so now, actually, before I do this, I'm going to cut off the salvage. I just hate wasting fabric. But when you cut wrong, you have to solve the problem somehow. Okay. So this is 40 inches. Actually, it's 44 inches. So it's 11 inches wide. Yeah. But we'll use up 1/4 inch joining it with our seam and our angle. So I'm going to leave all of these here for the time being, and we will work it out later. All right, close up the rotary cutter. Move this out of the way for the time being. And let's look at what we have. This is what we're going for. And the directions say to cut 48 2.5 by 5.5 inch rectangles. There's that. Then it says to cut 36 1.5 inch squares. There's that. Then it tells us to cut 83 1.5 inch by 5.5 inch pieces of white fabric that we have there. The next thing it says is to cut two 2.5 by 19 inch strips. 2.5 inches by 19 inches. And then set 3 2.5 inch strips aside for later. So we have 2.5 inches, 1, 2, and 3. And then last but not least, it says to cut 5 2.25 inch strips by width of fabric for the binding. And again, I chose to do 2.5 inch strips instead of 2.25 inch strips. So the only thing we're missing here is our backing fabric, which again we're going to work on later on after we get the quilt put together. After we get our top put together, then we will determine how much we need for the backing. Because it never fails, something slips or does something weird when you're sewing. So, all right, we've got our strips there for the binding. This is our extra stuff that I don't even know where it's for part E later on. No, excuse me. Wow. These are our 2.5 inch by 19 inch strips. And I'm going to take our nice 1.5 inch strips and put them here. Because now we have two options. What time is it? Okay, we have 50 minutes. Excellent. So here are the two options. It says we need to make 24 5 inch by 5 inch blocks. And they are composed of 2 of these and 1 of these. So 24 squares. I'm going to pull out 24 of these just so that I know I have the right number. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. All right. So the rest of these are going to go off to the side here with my little 1.5 inch squares, because they're going to be a border at some point in time. And we'll have to work on that too. Okay, so 2 options I mentioned. Randomly, you pull a piece of fabric out of here, you put it onto the white strip, then you pull another piece of fabric out, put it on the other side of the white strip, and just randomly go to town. I tend to not be very good at random. So I'm going to put them on my design wall, not with the strips. So there's one. Sorry, I have zippers back here that seem to want to be in my way. There's 2. We have 3 rows? We do have 3 rows. And they're going to go like this. Now, this is not necessarily the order they're going to be sewn in finally, but I just want to get an idea of where they're going. Because we're going to have to move these around. I know that with absolute certainty I'm not going to like where things are at. But I'm going to try. 1, 2, 3, 4, too far apart. Let's put you over there. All right. Is that the way it goes? Up and down on that side? Yes. All right. And then it goes this way. Now remember, there are 4 of each pattern in this stack. And like I said, placement is not what I'm going for at this moment in time. I am trying to get some color combos that I like together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right. So now we have half of them. We go back through and see what we think of the colors together. They're not going to be right next to each other. There's going to be a gap, so I should leave a little gap. I was worried there was a lot of green in this, and I'm finding that I'm agreeing with my issue, that there is a lot of green. So finding something to go on the other side is a little challenging. All right, here's the blue. Let's put a red. Whoops. And again, I do want to point out to you that you can do this all haphazardly, organically, whatever term you want to use, without putting them up on a wall. I just like to see how the colors go together. So each of these 2 sets are going to go together. And I put them side by side like this because that's how they are going to be on the finished quilt, but also because that way I can look at them and I can see which direction they're going in and ensure that I like the direction they're going in. All right, so I'm going to step back this way so I can see from the angle that you're seeing on the camera and determine if there's any issues with patterns being the same. So I do notice one where the patterns are the same and the colors are too close. That won't work. Actually, no, that won't work. Let's see. Let's do this. So the one that's standing out to me is these 2 patterns are exactly the same. I'm going to take that one up there and put that one down there. Now remember, where they're at in the quilt may not end up being where they're at in the finished quilt. But for right now, all I'm looking at are the squares. I don't see that I've repeated any patterns where the same fabrics with the other same fabric anywhere. So actually, I think that's pretty good. Surprisingly, that's pretty good. That was quick. I'm not usually that quick. Okay. So now we have our white in the middle, and we need 2 stacks here. So to keep them in order, I'm taking them down and putting them here. So that I know these are in order of the way I want them to go together. There we go. So everything's off the wall and in order in front of me. So I'm going to move these to the sewing machine. There we go. And we're going to move all of you over to the sewing machine. Alrighty. So now we've got to get the sewing machine set up to sew. We've got blue thread on here because I was doing something with blue thread, and it's polyester. You can tell by the color of the spool. What was I doing? Oh, I made my father a bag he requested. All right. So I set that off to the side. I'm keeping my 1/4 inch piecing foot on here, so that's what I want to, because that's what I want to use. But I am going to change out my needle. You need to should change out your needle with every project. I don't necessarily follow that rule depending on the size of the project, but it is a good practice to do. Okay. And let's see. Normally, I would use a universal 70. I don't know if you can see the number or not. It's got a 70 on it. But I would also be using 60 weight cotton thread. Because this is an off-white and I want to use the bright white is a standard 50 weight, which is what you get all the time. The 60 weight I have to special order. So I am going to use, since I'm using the standard 50 weight, I am going to use a standard universal 80 needle. And there we go. Excellent. All right, there is barely any thread on this bobbin, so I am going to take what little thread is there off. and put new thread on. So now my machine allows me to wind the bobbin through the needle. It has these special metal grooves and metal plates and a metal groove over here. If your machine does not have those things, you can't just assume you can wind your bobbin through your needle. It can shear the thread and make it weaker and cause you to have a problem later on. I'm going to turn my speed down because you should never wind a bobbin at full speed. And now go. Oh. We have an issue under stitch plate. What happened down here? Ah, there is a piece of thread down in there. Come on. Come on, you silly piece of thread. All right, that's better. All right. And now the last thing I'm going to do to set up before we actually start our project is, because I am using thicker thread and a wider needle, or bigger needle, because 80 is bigger than 70, I am going to do a little test on some spare fabric. Hold on just a second. I should have thought of this beforehand. Wasn't thinking about the fact that I need to do this. All right, cut one more piece that's 5.5. Rotary cutter. Okay, so since I have extra fabric, which we threw away, I grabbed some out of the garbage, and I had this one extra piece of white fabric, I am going to do a test run to make sure that I am going to get a, I think it said 5-inch square when I sew. So whenever you have fabric that's got this scalloped edge to it, you want to line up your straight-edged fabric, if you're using that, with the bottom of the V, because that's where it's supposed to line up. And so I'm going to drop my stitch length down to 1.5. I like to do that when I quilt. Piece, sorry. And then we need, oops, some starter fabric. When we do this later on, where are my little scissors? Everything is not where it belongs today. I'm just having a day. All right. Let's use the big ones. So when you start sewing, you usually end up starting somewhere in here, because if you start out here, it doesn't feed the fabric through. So what do you do to solve that problem is you take a piece of spare fabric and start sewing on it. And I want my needle to end in the down position. And when we get to the actual pieces, we're going to chain piece, so we won't need starter fabric at the beginning of each of them. We'll just need it at the beginning of the first 24. All right, so now I'm going to stitch in and put my fabric underneath there, and I'm keeping the edge of my 1/4 inch piecing foot along the edge of the white fabric. And we cut. So now we're going to turn around and we're going to do the exact same thing with the other piece of fabric. So we open this up a little bit. And line this up, the white fabric up with the other piece of the fabric. Making sure it's at the bottom of the V. And of course you are welcome to use pins to attach this, pins, clips, whatever. Just don't sew over the pins. They might pop, the needle might pop out and poke you in the eye. Or jam up your machine, and then you have to take it to get maintenance, and that takes forever. So no sewing over pins. It's just not a good idea. Keep everybody lined up. All right, let's cut off our feeder fabric. Trim off our tails. All right, there we go. Now, the next part is to press the square. You always want to, if you possibly can, you want to press towards the colored fabric, so away from the white fabric. So I'm going to press this seam down, and no opening it up, nothing, just leaving it the way it is. And you're like, well, why do you do that? It loosens up the threads in the fabric so that they're going to take a press better. Okay. And now I'm going to take the colored fabric and I'm going to push it up over both edges of the seam. So if you've ever did any garment sewing and it always says press seam open, here we are not pressing it open. We are pressing it to one side or the other. And in this case, we're pressing it to the side that's got the colored fabric. Okay. Now we're going to do it. That was the red side or the pink side or whatever you want to call it. Now we're going to press to the blue. Same idea. Press it closed, warming up those pieces of fabric so they loosen up a little bit. And then press to the dark color. Okay, and now we're going to use our best press, and we're going to lightly, not like before, lightly put some best press on there just to make sure everybody's nice and sharp. And you can use starch if you want, or you can use the best press. Either one's going to work. And we get it all nice and pressed. Okay, let's come over here so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so here's our square. You can see the white fabric, sort of. There we go. The fabric is all pressed to one side. All pressed to the dark side, the colored fabric side. And this square is supposed to be 5 inches by 5 inches, finished, which means it should be 5.5 inches right now. So this is one of those things that come in handy, having an actual square. We're going to put the edge of the ruler down at the bottom. Let me move and adjust so you can see better. Line up the bottom. And now the fabric goes to 5.5 on this edge, and it goes to 5.5 on this edge. So that square is 5.5 inches square. The other thing is it's at 2.25 on this line, which is the seam between the red and the white, and it's at 3.25 on the seam that's between the white and the blue, or green, whatever it is. It's more blue, I think. So this white strip is exactly 1 inch wide. And that's what we need. This block is complete as it's supposed to be. It is exactly 5.5 inches square, and the distance of the white piece in between is now 1 inch. It was 1.5 inches when we cut it, and now that we have sewn it up, we used a 1/4 inch seam on this side and a 1/4 inch seam on this side, which got rid of a 1/2 inch of fabric. So this square and the way I'm sewing is the way I want it to work. All right. So that means we're ready to go. So I have this stack of fabric. I have my white fabric. And then I have this stack of fabric. And they are sitting just off to the side here. If I move them up a little bit, you can probably see them. Not quite, but I am going to sew all of one side on, and then I'm going to sew all of the other side on. And then we're going to cut and press. So first we need a feeder fabric. taking one piece of colored fabric, and we're taking one piece of white fabric. Making it all nice and lined up, straight, and we're going to sew. So leaving that on, not moving anything. Second piece of fabric. Second piece of white fabric. And we're going to sew off of this piece a little bit and then put this piece underneath. Called chain piecing. And we're going to do that for all 24 pieces. Now, as I'm sitting here sewing this, something is dawning on me. We're going to go backwards when we sew the other side on. So I'm going to have to reverse the stack of fabric. Or just turn it upside down. That would work too. carried away with that one. Whoa, this one's really off. There we go. All right, so we have all 24 pieces sewn together and chained, as it's called. So the next thing to do is to put the other side on. And because we're starting at the bottom of the stack, this was the last piece I pulled out of my stack of fabric. Here is the stack of fabric as I picked it up off the wall. So I need to turn it over, and then this piece goes to that piece. I am not going to do that now. I'm going to step over here and go back to this camera and let you know that it's 10 minutes till 12, which is when we end. So instead of starting that all up, which would take me probably 15 minutes to get through again, we're going to start from there next time. Part of the reason is because then the next step is pressing all 24 of those squares, which gets really dull and boring. So I want to at least start on a active note instead of a passive note next time. Once we do that, let's see, what is the next step? So once we get all 24 made, we're going to complete the blocks. "24 split blocks." Not certain what that means, but we'll have to look at that next time and figure out where we're going with that. But you saw the one. This is what one block is going to look like. And then we're going to put the white strip, and there's going to be the colored blocks in the corner. So we'll have to be laying those all out. So I had originally scheduled 2 parts for this particular activity project. I'm going to say we're going to be at 3, probably 4. But we'll have to wait and see how it all works out. So y'all have a great day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow so that you get notifications of when I've got videos coming out. Typically, it's going to be every Monday from 10 to 12 for live streams, but I am working on doing some other things, so you want to check that out and make sure you follow and like. You have a great day. We'll see y'all later.